Another week, another episode. Go Big 12 or Go Big Home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by Iowa broadcasting legend Drew Russell. Drew Russell, what a fantastic weekend of football.
Oh man, Brandon, it was. We had some great football in the Big 12. We had some exciting endings. We had some dominating road victories. And we had a very, very interesting week in the Pick'em as well. And we had some hearts shattered, especially, I think, the first game of the week last week. That definitely was one of the wildest endings you're gonna find in a college football game just ever. It had absolutely everything.
I think I got some type of bug because I feel like every time I talk about a team, if you recall, I was like, watch out for TCU. Then they lose to West Virginia and get blown out against Iowa State. I'm like, okay, well, West Virginia is really good. They got to pass the Big 12 championship game. They got to beat Texas to get there, or they got to beat. They could lose to Oklahoma, still make it to the Big 12, and now they lose to Houston on the road. So it is what it is. I do got to say, with that information said, I think Iowa State really does go 11, or Eastern Iowa really does go 11-1. I think they could even win the Big Ten with that stout defense. Electric. I mean, they could. Yeah, I think that. I
Yeah,
think it
they
horribly.
might be able to.
Yeah, I think Eastern Iowa is one of the best teams in the country, and I think that they're going to go on a run here. Watch out for the Hawkeyes. Watch out.
Hey,
That's all I got to say.
I just want to say, Brian Ferentz, extend the contract. I'm gonna keep. I've said every single week on this podcast, but I personally have been dialing in for a decent chunk. I'm invested. Heck, I'm even reading a couple articles a week because I don't give a rip about Iowa football. I don't like Iowa football. But I'll tell you what, they've got me invested. And isn't that what it's all about, Brandon? Isn't it all about drawing eyeballs to the program? And I say Brian Ferentz is doing his job. There is nationwide interest on what Iowa offensively is doing.
There's a chance that they go 11-1. They average 14 points a game. He contractually gets fired after making a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, we can't draw it up any better. What a
I
crazy
think it
world.
sounds like the dream. I mean, with the playoff expanding next year, and I'm still not sure kind of what the future of certain bowl games are. Like the Rose Bowl is probably going to be a lot different in the future. And obviously the usual Pac-12 versus Big Ten matchup clearly going by the wayside because the Pac-12 is dissolving. So I kind of want to see him go to Pasadena. I'm kind of curious. Like, let's get ripped in the Big Ten championship. That team makes the college football playoff, and then ship them out and have them take on like a USC or somebody like that. And hey, I think they could make it a game. Maybe you never know.
You're
But just
absolutely right.
give me the stage. Give me that stage. I'm all in. But yeah, Brian Ferentz, they might legit go 11-2, and like he might be gone, which is hilarious.
I do appreciate you bringing up Iowa and the Rose Bowl because I have some great information for you. Nebraska, a team who's traditionally not been in the Big Ten, has had more recent success at the Rose Bowl than Iowa. So just want to point out Iowa has not won a Rose Bowl since 1959. I don't even know who's president then, but he's long gone by now. I mean, it's a lifetime ago. My father's on the verge of retirement, and I promise you, he doesn't remember that game. They had 0 appearances between 1992 and 2015. So a whole lifetime between birth and adulthood. That whole time, like learning to read, learning how to use the bathroom, learning cursive, learning trigonometry, graduating high school, a whole lifetime like that, and then some, getting a college degree, 0 appearances from Iowa in the Rose Bowl, a bowl game that is directly tied to a Big Ten team. And
Pretty
then,
amazing.
yeah, they finally broke that streak because they got a participation trophy after Michigan State went to the college football playoff. And in case you didn't remember what happened then, they got blown out by Stanford. And I bring up Nebraska in the statistic because it is very silly. It feels like because Nebraska's never won a Rose Bowl. Um,
Yep.
Not to mention that they're not in a conference that has a direct tie to the Rose Bowl, but they did play in one 2002 against one of the greatest teams in college football history, Miami. They lost by 23, which is still not as many points as when Iowa lost to Stanford. A very good team had Christian McCaffrey, if I'm not mistaken. Very good team, not an all-time historically great college football team, and still couldn't keep it within 23. But it is what it is. So I'm glad that you brought that up and let me get on my soapbox a little bit about Nebraska's more recent tradition with the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Dwight Eisenhower. He was the president during that. So, I think it was I like Ike or whatever it was
Yeah,
for his campaign slogan. So, yeah, that was before the Kennedy administration and the chaos of the 60s and all that. So, yeah, I'll admit that's no question. It's been a minute, Brandon. That's been a minute for sure for Iowa football. And that might be a tradition that's going to be like any other. So I'm happy you brought up the
yeah,
participation trophy though with 2015 because yeah, that Michigan State team barely got past them. Everybody said Big Ten's really good that year, and then Michigan State just got wrecked by Alabama on. I think that was the first time they had the New Year's Eve. They tried
yeah.
the New Year's Eve
So
for the
excited.
first time, and I remember the television ratings were like
Yeah.
it was like 17 million people was watching at the start of the game, and it was like down to like 7 by the time it was over because it was such a blowout, and it was New Year's
Now,
Eve too.
now that wasn't the year with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, was it?
That was year before. That was so
Okay,
that year I think was the second year
that's right.
of the
Yeah, yeah,
college
yeah.
football playoff, and I remember the first year it went really well because they had Alabama versus Ohio State who snuck in late.
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy too because TCU
There were
was knocking on the doorstep.
TCU and Baylor. Here's our first Big 12 segment of the day.
There we go.
Well, perfect. We had to talk about it sometime. Um, that yeah, TCU and Baylor both were outstanding that year, and Baylor had Art Briles. TCU was difficult under Patterson, and they played one of the most wild football games ever, where TCU had a big lead down in Waco. Baylor scores, I think it was they were down 21 with like 10 to go. They come back, go to OT. Baylor finds a way, and I think it's like 61-58. It was some crazy score. And so Baylor had the head-to-head win over TCU. Well, then Baylor slipped up sometime during that season, and Big 12 didn't have a championship game then.
Yeah,
There was the one true champion, and they based off the regular season. So regular season ends, Baylor's 11-1, TCU's 11-1, and both teams are claiming they've got a conference championship. And Big 12 wouldn't say who their official conference champion was, and it probably should have been Baylor because they had the head to head, but they
yeah,
wouldn't do it. And so they submitted both, and they both finished 5-6 in that initial poll, and both were really good. Those were two
yeah.
really good football teams, and kind of hurt the Big 12 just branding wise for a bit as well in terms of kind of establishing dominance outside of an Oklahoma, who was pretty much the only power at the time. Texas had fallen off. So it was pretty interesting. But that first year was great because it had the Alabama, Ohio State, who they had a pretty rough season, Ohio State, by their standards, and they were kind of wobbling in, but they got hot late. They were able to make a couple changes at QB, and then they found a way to get past Alabama. And then, Oregon had Marcus Mariota, the Heisman winner that year. He took out Jameis in the Rose Bowl when Jameis famously slipped and just lost the ball. So, but that was on New Year's Day, I remember, and it was just
That's
awesome
right.
to watch those games. That first year is like, this is a huge success.
Yeah,
And then that next year they had on New Year's Eve, and it's like you want to watch, yet you want to go out as well. And so it's kind of brutal. Like I care, but none of these teams necessarily directly involve me. So I think that hurt them. I always thought that was pretty stupid.
yeah. I'll tell you what. Well, for me, it's a little bit different because it's college football over everything. I will stay home as opposed to New Year's Eve plans. I don't need any of that. I get how that doesn't appeal to the masses, but it appeals to me personally. But because of that, we also got what might be my favorite moment in sports history, and that's all the videos I got to see on TikTok on January 1st of folks in Columbus, Ohio, celebrating them about to upset Georgia in the college football playoff, and they kick the field goal, shit you not, as the clock is striking midnight. So they're
Remember
celebrating
that?
with their families. Happy New Year's. You got the party favors going on, and then just shanks the field goal. Their season's done. They're everybody's celebrating the new year except like the college football sickos, the Ohio State true and true. And it's just I watch it. I watch those TikToks. I have them saved. I watch them every other week. It's
No,
just
they're terrific. They're really good. It shows the creativity and the sick minds like the sickos that we have in this country. And I'll tell you what, Brent, I'm getting, older to the point now where I'm with you. Like last year, we had two outstanding
yeah.
games in the semifinals, TCU stunning Michigan and just a thriller, and Ohio State 100% had Georgia on the ropes and very could have easily won that game. But you're right, the way that just the way that game ended was just absolutely hysterical.
Like the ball in the air as
Yeah.
people are counting down to the new year. That game could have ended 100 different ways and within like 100-second margin, and it doesn't matter at all. But just the stars aligned for this truly sick moment in college football history that I will never forget. It'll never, nothing like that will ever happen again, where a
No.
team's season ends as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve. That's so ridiculous to think about. It's never happening again, but I'm so happy I got to experience it one time and at the expense of Ohio State.
Ohio State's they've had a tough run in the college football playoff. They won the first year. And then after that, they just started hitting brick wall after brick wall most years.
I
Like they
wonder
only
what
made the
happened. Did they make a
championship.
coaching change or something? I mean, they made it
I don't
that
know.
that second year with QB3, and then all of a sudden they make a coaching change and get future NFL Hall of Famer CJ Stroud in there, and they still can't win it.
It makes you think. Yeah, in fact, I just saw a TikTok today about Ohio State QBs getting to the NFL, and it was a bunch of these little kids singing, and that like they're
No,
mentioning like a JT Barrett. Maybe you saw this.
yeah, I was like, oh,
That they were all off key, all this, and then at the very last minute, this kid comes up, sings the chorus. He sounds great, and it says CJ Stroud, and all these other kids are looking at him angrily, and I just bursted out laughing. And I saw that former Ohio State QB Cardell Jones, he found that pretty funny on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I just cracked up. I don't know, that kind of stuff you can't make up, Brandon.
It is weird to me how, boy, I feel like we spent more time talking about Ohio State than the Big 12 this week, but it's so weird how like these traditional powers that crank out all sorts of talent all over the NFL rosters, but they can't do quarterbacks.
I know. Well, I think let's talk, let's bring Big 12 back into this. Let's talk about Oklahoma and its history in the college football playoff and the Big 12 overall. Oklahoma makes it in 2015-16. They lose to Clemson 37-17. No Big 12 team for a couple of years. Then they make it back in 2017-18 with Baker Mayfield, their Heisman winner. Lose a heartbreaker out in California. That offense was outstanding, but their defense was trash. Lost to Georgia in OT.
I think if those last 2 minutes in that first half go even a little bit better for Oklahoma, they win that game by 2.5 touchdowns.
Agreed. And I think they could have taken out Bama that year in the championship, but they couldn't get past. Next year, they lose to Alabama in the semifinals. Lose to LSU that next year as Joe Burrow annihilates them famously.
What are you do?
Yeah, that LSU team was just loaded. And then no Big 12 team makes it again until last year with TCU, and they took out Michigan before having a very difficult championship game against Georgia. And even Cincinnati made it, obviously, the year before, and they had a valiant effort, but couldn't hang with Alabama.
Yeah, that's a tough ask.
So that's a tough ask. But yeah, that's your history, Big 12-wise, in that. And since we are making that change over to 12 teams next year, we meant to talk about Rose Bowl earlier and our famed run with Iowa in the Rose Bowl. But it'll be interesting when that goes to 12, how the Big 12 can fare going forward, especially assuming everything stays nearly the same. They'll get that automatic spot based on the conference champion.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so. And I think as a whole, and like if you're in an SEC camp or you're in a Big Ten camp, you're gonna kind of shit on the Big 12 for this. But as a
Mhm.
college football just connoisseur and as somebody who just loves the chaos and the excitement that comes with college football above any other sport in any other league, the power vacuum in the Big 12 is going to be crazy to see how it shapes up. The conference is going to look so different than it does. I mean, we're obviously new teams and new structures, but just the dynamic of these teams in this league is going to look so different in 5 years. It'll be almost unrecognizable. And there's 10 fan bases in this league that thinks that they could be the new kingpin in the Big 12.
Yep.
And like I said, as long as they keep those auto bids in the college football playoff, they're going to have an opportunity to compete on the sport's biggest stage every single year, whether it's TCU getting back to developing NFL
Mhm.
talent, or Coach Prime, if he can find some type of
Right.
success, you capture some momentum, or Coach Gundy knows the heartland as well as anybody. Iowa State pulls out some wins. They probably feel pretty good, especially with as young as that team is. They could capture
Mhm.
some momentum. Texas Tech loves their new coach. Teams like Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU, they think they're finally getting their fair crack in college football. You have all these teams that think that truly feel like they have an opportunity to compete. Where you look in the Big Ten, it's like, yeah, Minnesota likes PJ Fleck, but you really think that you're
Mhm.
going to go toe to toe in a conference that's going to get significantly harder to win?
Yeah, this is a really interesting discussion because you look at the Big 12 and you feel like it's wide open. And we've talked about that in previous podcasts as well. Is there are opportunities there? I mean, it is saying who wants to grab it? Who wants this opportunity? Because you can find a lot of success quickly in this new era of the Big 12 if you have the right formula. If you're Big 10, on the other hand, I mean, for some of those programs that are kind of sitting on that average scale or can't get through, and, not to let's talk Big 10 West for just a minute. That that's a situation where all those programs have found success at times in the last few years. They've had quite a few representatives in the Big Ten championship game on that side of the bracket just in the last 5 years. But overall, once they add the two California schools, Oregon, Washington, those are right now four top 25 teams in the country. Oregon and Washington are top 10 teams. USC looked pretty lost last week, but that's a top 15 team with a quarterback that will probably be a top pick, if not next year's draft, the year after. And that's scary. You're Minnesota, you're a little bit worried of, do we have enough? If you're Wisconsin, do you guys have enough? Illinois, Iowa, sorry, Nebraska, even. I mean, how do they adapt to that? And I don't know if those opportunities are there as much. In fact, I don't believe they are right now compared to like the Big 12, where shoot, you can make an argument all 16 teams when we get to our full conference next year. I mean, so many of them are going to be looking and saying, there is no historical powerhouse in this conference. There have been teams that have had great stretches. There are teams that have seen success in major bowl games, but there's not like historically not a lot of national championships in this new version of the Big 12. So there is opportunity there, and who's going to seize it is the question.
And yeah, like I said, I think that's what makes this conference so exciting. That's why we do our whole show on it, because it's just
Right.
so exciting. And even the schools that are kind of down on their luck, like Arizona State and Houston, minus what they did Thursday night. You look at it's a different thing. But you look at what Coach Prime is doing at Colorado, and you think, as a fan, if you're like, if we could just get this coaching hire right, if we can just get this offseason right, on top of the fact that this conference is wide open, why can't it be us? You're absolutely right. Every
Mhm.
single one of these teams has some bit of optimism and hope that you can't find in it in any other conference.
No, you're dead right, Brandon, because again, SEC for Texas and Oklahoma, they're going to go swim with the Sharks. And I'll tell you what, just even 2 months ago when we started our show back in August, we had serious doubts of are these schools ready? And Oklahoma, especially, I had concerns
Yeah.
about, especially how difficult their 2022 year is. Now, they look pretty good. Texas is definitely trending in the right direction. And SEC is having a kind of a bizarre, like, down year a little bit just based on how they've done historically. But some of those big powers, Alabama's still tough, but you just don't feel like their team is as good as they have been in the past. Same with Georgia. They're a tough team. They could easily win it all, but you don't feel like they're as good as the last two national championship teams, and they've just lost star tight end Brock Bowers for a few weeks. And then A&M, boy, what a fun time. I'll tell you what, we should low-key devote a segment just to the Jimbo watch and that chaos that's going on out in East Texas, because that's chaotic right now with that $90 million buyout. Auburn's always chaotic, it seems, last few years. LSU, Brian Kelly's continuing his fake Southern accent. I mean, it's just mayhem right now. And it's, and same SEC, though, still has some big juggernauts. Big Ten has juggernauts. ACC still has Clemson, Florida State. Notre Dame has their weird deal where they're playing a few games a year and then a full member in all the other sports. So again, you're a Big 12 player, coach, you have chances in the coming years and the door's wide open.
Outstanding. No better time to be part of a conference. It's no better time.
Hey, I fully agree, Brandon. But then again, though, there's still the Mountain West. There's some chaos going on out there these days. So, it's fun. It's a fun time. Fun time.
But got some crow to take here as we talk about our pick'em. I mean, boy, we talked about last week. I don't think it's possible to have a week as bad. I went 1-4 2 weeks ago. You remember that, Drew Russell? 1-4.
I do. And I'll tell you what. I was a little scared, Brandon. I thought this is one of the best bettors I know. This guy always knows what's going on. I thought, how did Brandon go 1-4?
We're picking straight up here.
Yeah, this is
how hard is this?
Line. Yeah,
and guess what, Drew Russell? I did it again. Back-to-back weeks ago, 1-4.
Brandon.
And I mean, what a
man.
1-4.
I don't even know what to say.
2-8 in 2 weeks. We're picking straight up here.
I'm kind of blown away. Because again, your picks. I've texted you a good amount of Saturday mornings. Give me some winners. You tell me, I go deliver. And I'm pretty shocked. Another 1-4. This is. I'm starting to think we might need. You might have to look at the GM a little bit and see if he's doing his job right now.
Yeah, I gotta look at the process. Oddly enough, we have our sports betting show, Bookie Brook and the Boys, here on the Corners Connection Network. I've gotten kind of hot lately. I started down $3,000 in the hole. Just started, and now that I'm getting my feet back underneath me, I reevaluated the process. Maybe that's what I got to do here going forward.
Hey, but man, I'm just, and it's not like these were bad. Like, we'll talk about. Let's just dig into it. West Virginia, Houston. Yeah. That was a good pick. I don't care. That ending was so bizarre that that wasn't a bad pick by either one of us, in my opinion. It was just horrible luck.
And I don't feel bad about any of these picks. I mean, Kansas has played pretty well. I mean, Kansas didn't win that game, did they?
No, Oklahoma State got him.
Well, yeah, Mr. Bean, who I didn't know was allowed to throw a football, he threw for almost 400 yards. He was awesome.
Yeah, he was stunning.
If you had told me that was going to happen, I would have been like, absolutely, give me Kansas to win. Throwing that well. Cincinnati at home. I mean, they went 24-0 at home in the American Conference. Granted, it's not against the Big 12. I get it. It's a new coach. I get it. It's not Luke Fickell. But, man, I figured at least a little bit of that would carry over. Guess not. Cincinnati stinks. Texas Tech, boy, thought that they had something. I thought they were finally picking up the pieces. Kansas State doesn't know who their quarterback is. Doesn't matter. In Lubbock, are you kidding me? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I know. I thought, admittingly, Brandon, I would low key. I just wanted to make it interesting on that game. I was like, you know what? I'll take Kansas State. I don't love the pick, but I was like, I got, you know what? Let's make this competitive. And I guess it worked out.
Yeah, and I felt good about it too because I'm like, oh well, this is an opportunity to get one back. No, now I'm just falling further and further behind.
Yeah.
Man,
No, it's pretty wild. There's no other way to put it, Brandon. I just looking at the slate from last week. Tough week. Tough week for you. But you know what? There's a new week coming, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But West Virginia. I'm going to harp on this game for a minute. Just they didn't play very well down the stretch. They got one of the great breaks I've seen where it's 4th and 10. They don't have any timeouts. They're on the Houston 40. They throw a ball over the middle. They streak down 40 yards, score with 10 seconds left. And I thought, wow, they just pulled one out of their tail and found a way to get it done. And then to have a 15-yard penalty on excessive celebration. Houston gets the ball, and I'll give Houston credit. They put themselves in position right at the 50. Decent Hail Mary spot. You're going to at least get it there. And, tip drill went into effect, and Houston found a way to capture their first Big 12 win. And for West Virginia, just a type of loss was pretty brutal because offensively, they've been pretty meh this season. And they got some big numbers out of Garrett Green. He had 391 yards passing. The rushing attack had one of their better efforts of the season. They're able to limit turnovers relatively decently. And yet Houston, there were 42 points in that fourth quarter combined, 22 for West Virginia and 20 for Houston.
Feels like an SEC shootout. They don't play any defense.
Yeah. No defense. It was that was Big 12 from like 2008. It was just old school deal, but a vicious loss for West Virginia. And even though they have overachieved by a big extent this year, that was a winnable football game in Houston. And put it bluntly, they blew it.
Yeah, you talk about on election night, you have certain states that you have to win. Right. You look at the map and you say, here's the map to the presidency. If you're a Republican, you gotta win Texas as first and foremost. You gotta get the plains. You got, Florida's a big swing state if you can get that. For West Virginia, this is a game that you had to have won if you're gonna make a push towards Arlington. This is one that you already have to have locked up.
Yeah.
It feels like the presidency's way out of reach now.
You feel like it's, I was digging into the Big 12 standings. They win that game. They're one of two undefeated teams in the conference with Oklahoma. With that loss, Oklahoma's the only one that's undefeated. And then after that, you have 5 teams right now with one loss, including West Virginia, Oklahoma State, K-State, Texas, and Iowa State. And, they could have kept themselves out of that pack. They had a winnable game coming up this week, still a winnable game. And this chance, you cannot blow games like this if you're trying to make it to Arlington and tailgate with Big 12 or go home before the game. So just a missed chance right there.
Yeah, and we were looking at like if West Virginia could just win the games that they're going to be favored in, they're in. They're in. Because, you're even if you chalk up a loss to Oklahoma, they have one loss. They have the head-to-head. So what? Who cares? But then you kind of get into a tiebreaker scenario with Texas. And if you're West Virginia, that might be all that you need.
Yeah.
I guess then you have to look at common opponent winning percent. But that's such a low bar. It's like just win the games that you're favored to win.
Yeah. It really is sometimes that simple. And I get it. It's a road game. Maybe there was a little bit of an emotional high coming off of a nice win against TCU the week before. Yeah. But situational football for both teams, Houston as well. Houston lost like that I mean, we're talking about Dana Holgerson right now and
Yeah.
what is going on there. But for Houston, hey, they were able to find a way into the win column. It's been a tough season for them, and that's got to feel good just to pick up a Big 12 victory.
Yeah, and I mean, short week, halfway across the country, that's not nothing. That's a
Mhm.
real bad draw.
It is.
To get a weeknight game like that, a Thursday night game halfway across the country, you're traveling to a different time zone in the middle of the week. No time to prepare.
Yeah, that's actually a quick. I got a question for you on that. That
Yeah,
look, college football, they make a lot of money. That we're right now. What are we at? About 7 or 8 straight weeks where there is a football game every night between college and the NFL. I mean, we got Tuesday night football, Wednesday. I mean, it's chaos and it's a lot of fun for a lot of people. That said, though, for a brand like the Big 12, is it good to put certain games on a Thursday night or a Friday night? Do you think it's good? I mean, naturally, you'd say it's good branding nationally because they might get buried in a Saturday slate. But I'm sure the teams aren't ecstatic about it. But is it good for the Big 12 overall?
I think it is absolutely good. I think there's a right way to go about it. I don't think that you have West Virginia come halfway across the country to play Houston. That doesn't feel like a winning formula to me. But you got a lot of what the Big 12 has that a lot of these other conferences are losing very rapidly is regionality. So yeah, if you could even do like a double decker where you have like West Virginia and Central Florida, and they play a game where West Virginia and Cincinnati play at 6 o'clock. Third quarter kicks off, and then you have Arizona and Colorado playing on the West Coast on a Thursday, Friday night. Maybe not the double decker situation like that, but you have those kind of options where you can kind of play with the short week. You know, you get these guys on a short flight, give them an extra couple of days to prepare for the next week. I think that that's absolutely a win, especially when you and as you said it, you can get buried in a Saturday slate. There's so much good college football going on, and where the Big 12 is kind of disadvantaged is going to be on those high end matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you? I love the Big 12, Drew Russell. You know me, but are you going to really be watching TCU and Iowa State when USC's playing or
Great point.
Ohio State on a 2:30 slate, or
That's a great
Michigan's
point.
playing Stanford or not Stanford, when Michigan's playing Washington, and so on and so forth. So I think that yeah, there is a unique opportunity for a conference like the Big 12 to make hay, not while the sun's out, but while nobody else is playing on Thursdays and Friday nights. And like I said, there's a good way to do it. I don't think West Virginia going across the time zone on a Thursday night's the best way to do it. But yeah, like a
Right.
TCU Houston game would have been awesome.
That's a good point.
Kansas State, Iowa State would have been just fine. Like those are great games. Certainly better than any other Thursday or Friday night games, and that's
Yeah.
why we're talking about it.
I think Thursday night, I actually agree with the Thursday night. I think it is a good, it is a good zone. People can watch. I think recruits can watch, or kids that are
Mhm.
interested in programs can watch easier. Friday night, I still have my doubts, though. And I think it's just because, look, nationally, high school football is being played at the same time. And, if I'm a coach or a program, not that those kids can't watch highlights, check a box score, whatever. I don't know. Like I'm sure those coaches would rather have them watch live, but maybe the exposure is important and maybe ultimately that doesn't matter. But maybe that's just me too on those Friday night games.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a trade off. You got to kind of value what coaches and recruits are going to look at, but also it's Brett Yormark kind of running the ship here, and I don't think he's going to look too deeply into well, what are high school recruits going to think more so like where am I going to get the most eyeballs and the most engagement and the brightest spotlight for the conference. But you're right. But I also think, and it's a very specific opportunity here. Like I don't think you could do like your peak rivalries on these kind of games. I think you save that for the Saturday slate. But it's a good opportunity to kind of get more eyeballs on some of these more unique matchups that like Iowa State and Kansas State. That's a pretty good rivalry in the
Hmm.
the Big 12 universe that just the whole country doesn't really get. They don't quite understand that there is a little bit of intensity with
Hmm.
Farmageddon.
Yep.
And now there's a rivalry between Kansas State and TCU kind of forming. That's a very niche Big 12 conference I think those are the perfect games to throw on a
That's a
night
good
slate
point.
like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, especially in the future with rivalry games, Big 12, to put it bluntly, in terms of football, they lose arguably their premier rivalry game with Texas and OU. So building rivalries, making sure there's hatred amongst teams and fan bases is so important. And Farmageddon's an outstanding example. TCU and Baylor have had some very fascinating kind of a rivalry history there. And it's important to build rivalries, and sometimes they are built in interesting time slots. That's a great point of showcasing those rivalries because, yeah, if you put, West Virginia Houston game that was pretty good, but you put it on a Saturday night and you're taking on Southern California versus Notre Dame, the average viewer is probably going to watch number two, at least as of right now. So that's a good point. And exposure might be just king and trumps everything.
Absolutely right. Great stuff going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, Drew Russell, I need a good
Mm.
week. I
Mm.
I love seeing this blank slate. I need it. I need it like water. Man,
You're not
this is
drinking
it.
enough water, Brandon? Is that
Now
you got to
I
have your
I
H
guess
two
so.
H2O. Get 12 cups a day. You'll feel better.
So I'm going to do something a little bit differently, Drew Russell. I got a new system, but the system is going to mostly involve picking pretty quickly. So I'm going to have you pick all your picks first. Then I'll go with my updated system here.
Oh man. So just
So,
pick like just go is what you're telling me.
well, I got a couple of tricks up my sleeve that I'm going to pull out because it
Oh.
can't get any worse. So I'm like, we got to change the
All
process here.
right. Okay, so we got Texas Tech BYU for number 1. That's a pretty interesting game actually because BYU, in fact, our 4 new conference schools, Brandon, they're still kind of adjusting to the Big 12 life. In fact, between the 4, only combined 2 wins right now between the 4 new schools and a pair of winless schools as well in the conference. So BYU still trying to make some adjustments. They have a really interesting opportunity at night against Texas Tech. And Provo at night, I just recently learned, Brandon, is a bit of a nightmare for opponents.
No kidding.
BYU is a disaster. You do not want to play them at night. There is something, we're talking water, there's something in the water out in Provo because it's kind of a nightmare. And Texas Tech, nice. They've been playing cleaner football as of late. BYU doesn't give me, you know, I'm going to go risky. I'm going to go BYU at home. I'm curious to see if they can keep this nighttime success going. Tough matchup for them because Texas Tech is finally starting to find a groove. Brooks at running back has put together some nice numbers the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to take the Cougs.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one to pick. But you um, kind of look at how Texas Tech is fair. I mean, they played a night game in Laramie, Wyoming, and couldn't get the job done. That was back when they had, a fully healthy team, and now you lose a couple of guys on the road. BYU is probably a little bit more intense at this point, where Texas Tech could very much be deflated
Mm-hmm.
based on how their season's gone so far. I love that pick. It's a great pick, Drew Russell.
Thank you, Brendan. So that'll be interesting. Next, we got a little TCU Kansas State. Uh, These were 2 teams that were viewed top 5 preseason favorites, both still a lot in front of them. Kansas State's been able to kind of clean things up a little bit. Good old Bill Snyder Memorial Stadium. I'm taking the home Cats on that one.
Yeah, Big 12 championship rematch. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Good
I
point.
mean, what a disappointing say for both of these teams kind of coming in. You both kind of have, Big 12 championship aspirations. Now, we're barely halfway through October. Kansas State has let me check my notes here, 3% chance to win the Big 12. Uh, Tough stuff.
Tough stuff, especially they, could easily be 3-0, but they ran into what is now a new buzzsaw in Oklahoma State. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is, or that was a couple weeks ago. So that's what we got there. Next, we got our Central Florida versus Oklahoma. Central Florida was one of my favorites in the preseason. I've really sung their praises. started off hot, Brandon, and boy, oh boy, has Big 12 slate not been nice to them. 0-3 in that. And boy, as much as I want to give those Knights a chance, Oklahoma is playing some football right now. They're off a bye week. They're at home in Norman. I'd be insane not to take Oklahoma in this scenario. So give me the Sooners. Dylan Gabriel, I think, keeps the good times going, and they're trying to see if they can find a way to an undefeated season, though they might have to run to Texas once again. We'll see that in the future.
Yeah, there's a formula to winning a Heisman Trophy, and first of all, you have to win the big close game, and I think Dylan Gabriel did that against Texas pretty well.
Mhm.
This is also another game where you need for that formula where you just kick the snot out of another team. Look like you're playing a different sport. This is an opportunity for him to do that. That's a great pick.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, West Virginia is this is, in my opinion, the toughest game for me to pick this week because Oklahoma State just a couple weeks ago we were talking about Mike Gundy. We're talking about the
Remember
future. We're
that.
saying what is going down in Stillwater? What is the situation? And guess what? Last couple weeks they've played some quality football to get to 4-2. They've kind of built their ship on the season, and it feels like they're trending in the right direction. West Virginia also, again, has overperformed. They're coming off of a very vicious loss in which they could easily be 3-0. West Virginia is a slight favorite at home. I can understand why their offense showed some energy last week, and Oklahoma State's defense isn't exactly devastating yet. I don't know. Cowboys are playing some strong football right now, and even though they're road dogs, I'm going to give them a shot. I think the Cowboys and Gundy keep the good times going and continue to kind of rebuild and revitalize this season. I just don't know if West Virginia can, I don't know, after such an emotionally draining loss, even with the 2 extra days of rest, I don't see it. I'm going to go OSU.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to fight that. I mean, if we were picking this time last week before that Houston game, I'm taking West Virginia running away, but that's also why I'm 2-8 in the last 2 weeks. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm no expert either, Brandon. I've got a few losses to my column, but we'll see how it plays out. We got Baylor, Cincinnati. This is also not a fun one. 2 teams that are just simply underachieving. Baylor hasn't drawn any inspiration for me. Cincinnati's not drawing any inspiration for me. Something has to happen. Sir Isaac Newton, in his 3 laws of motion, he defined them. So in this situation, Brandon, don't force me to say them because we're not going to live that right now. I don't want to embarrass all my teachers. So interesting matchup. I don't know. Baylor, I have no confidence on the road. I'll say Cincinnati finds a way to get it done at home.
Was also my same logic last week with Cincinnati, but
yeah,
I mean, one of these teams is going to have to,
yeah.
go home with the win.
Yeah,
I don't feel good about either of them.
Yeah, I don't feel good. Give me the home team. So we'll, we got Baylor on the spreadsheet. We'll get that fixed in a minute. And then Texas, Houston. Man, here's our chance, Cougs. Got an opportunity. Big bad Texas coming to town. Oh, man, I'm sure maybe they can get a full stadium on Fox, national TV. Give me Texas. I just don't see Houston finding a way to get this done. But my gosh, you never know. It could be interesting to say the least.
I did not realize they were putting that game on Fox. That's a bad beat for Houston.
That's a tough deal.
Fox is really like, hey, if we're gonna get Houston on, let's get them on now, like before the wheels completely fall off. That's a bad spot for Houston.
Interesting kind of these TV assignments for this week that ABC has UCF Oklahoma at 11 a.m. They put Baylor and Cincinnati on ESPN Plus, which I can get that. Oklahoma State and West Virginia is on ESPN, which, hey, that's good exposure.
Yeah.
Fox for Texas, Houston. Fox Sports 1 for Texas Tech BYU at night, which I think that's a fair deal.
Yeah.
The one that surprises me, just because, as you talked about, Brandon, this is our Big 12 championship rematch. TCU Kansas State, 6 o'clock on ESPN2, which is fascinating to me. And I don't know if they warranted a better TV slot or, prime time's usually a good time to have a football game. But I don't know. A couple of those assignments to me were pretty interesting this week, especially you mentioned that Texas with Fox, but it shows how much of a draw the Longhorns are nationally.
So who's getting that primetime ESPN slot then?
I would, if I had to take a guess, it'd probably be an SEC team. But let's take a look. And they should have, I'm guessing they're bringing back Pac 12 after dark this week.
Yeah. I agree with
Primetime
you.
ESPN, 5-1 Ole Miss versus 3-3 Auburn. And I'm guessing they're going to fight they'll say, look, it'll be the big Hugh Freeze rematch. That's what they'll build, which is funny. I'm not going
You're
to lie to you,
absolutely
Brandon.
right. Yeah, yeah.
It's a pretty interesting one. I wish that was in Mississippi, but it's in
Yeah, that's a good
Auburn,
spot.
Alabama. So it makes sense.
It's a good spot. Where's game day at this week?
I don't know. Let me look it up.
Yeah,
They were in Seattle last week, and it was
yeah,
quite an effort.
yeah.
Let's say I think they are in. Whoever wants to load it. Oh, they're going to be simple. Columbus, Ohio, Penn State, Ohio State.
Oh, that's right. Oh, do they get that game? Or is that a Fox game?
I think that's a Fox game, but they always say they'll go to the big location even if they don't have it. So that'll probably be competing game days. Maybe we can have Pat McAfee fight Urban Meyer. I think that to
Oh my
me would be
gosh.
high quality entertainment. And, I think it'd be kind of interesting personally. So, yeah, game day crews, they've been kind of under a little heat. Saw a poll yesterday about what people think of the new hire in Pat McAfee, and it was mixed. It was really mixed. I think it's a nice just breath of new flavor just to try something new, but there are a lot of people who are not with the McAfee shtick.
I'll tell you what, I'm not a huge fan of Pat McAfee in general, but I think it's been fine.
Yeah.
I think people are kind of blowing that out of proportion. I mean, he is a lot, but you also now you have another morning show to compete with in Fox Big Noon Kickoff, and as much as I love the classic and Kirk Herbstreit, Lee Corso, Desmond Howard, and the gang, you got to inject some new life into it. I don't know, maybe they haven't found the right formula yet. Another thing that I saw a lot of people complaining about in regards to Pat McAfee is during the Red River rivalry, they had YouTube TV does their multi-view,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't pick and choose the games. And I haven't heard a good reason for that, but I'd imagine it's like the network doesn't want to share a screen with other networks, so they only give you certain slots. So they had to put the Pat McAfee alternate broadcast on the multi-view, and people were up in arms about that. I'm like, you got 3 other games on the TV. If you don't want to listen to Pat McAfee, just scroll over and listen to that game.
I know. I mean, sometimes it's just kind of simple, like you don't want to listen or watch it, you can turn it off.
And also,
But
the
they're,
Pat McAfee broadcast had folks like Baker Mayfield on and Matthew McConaughey.
yeah,
Like that was I don't like I said I don't like Pat McAfee that much. I love Baker Mayfield. I
right.
love Matthew McConaughey. So yeah, I don't know what people are so upset about.
Yeah, I don't know. If you don't like it, you can always turn your TV. It really is that simple. But yeah, that's where game day is. That should be an interesting matchup between Penn
Can't
State,
wait.
Ohio State for sure. But I think we got a fun slate this week, Brandon. I've got my picks. And now, what is this new formula? Let's hear it. What
So
is the Shannon Brandahan special?
it's not it's nothing too complex here, but like I said, I can't get any worse. So we're just gonna go ahead and flip a coin here, through and through. So first game, Texas Tech at BYU. The home team will always be heads. The
Okay.
visiting will be tails. Excuse me. So BYU versus Texas Tech.
Oh man, this is just
It's
fat. Oh,
suspenseful,
here
man.
we go. Simple.
All right. So easy breezy. We got the home team, BYU, which honestly I like. I like
Yeah.
BYU at home. I think Provo's a tough place. I think flippity floppity if it's in Lubbock at 6 p.m. kickoff, maybe I lean towards the Red Raiders,
Mm.
but I go where the coin tells me to go.
Yeah.
Up
No, you
next,
gotta trust the coin.
Big 12 championship rematch, TCU and Kansas State. My heart would tell me TCU, but we follow the coin, and we're
Ah.
going with Kansas State at home. Probably not a bad move here. Also, this new quarterback for TCU. Do we have to have a conversation about Sonny Dykes picking quarterbacks? Because
Let's
he
have the
picked
conversation.
Sonny Dykes picks Chandler Morris over Max Duggan last year. Max Duggan goes on
Mhm.
to almost win a Heisman Trophy, leads his team to a national championship appearance, the only Big 12 team to ever win a playoff game, only team in the state of Texas to ever win a playoff game. And then he comes into the season, picks Chandler Morris over Mr. Hoover here, and then they have Mr. Hoover go out and throw 58 passes in his first ever start, and he lights it up.
Lights it up against a BYU team that in defense had some success at times this season,
Yeah.
I might
So
add.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
pretty wild to just say, you know what, forget it, we're airing it out 58 passes.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's just
true.
like, is that like your bugaboo? Like Lincoln Riley can't get a good defense. Um, other teams struggle to develop offenses. Nick Saban now without Bryce Young, can he do that? But is his shtick going to be he can't pick the best quarterback in his own locker room? He had 439 passing yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half.
Sometimes coaches, now last year might be different because he picked Morris over Duggan last year, and Duggan was a multi-year starter before he picked Morris. Injury happens, Duggan goes all out, has an outstanding year last year. I wonder if it was kind of almost like a heart connection. Like I've seen it in high school football, where oftentimes there might be a guy who's a underclassman or younger dude at a certain position that might be better than the guy who's a junior or senior. But because maybe the junior seniors put in the work, maybe there's another bunch of classmen with them that they're just like, you know what? I told this guy if he worked hard, did good in preseason practices, we're just going to give him the start no matter what, even if there's more talent on the sidelines. And I wonder if he low key felt bad for Morris all offseason, said, this is our guy no matter what, which I think it was the narrative that he might have just said regarding, Hoover, like, kid, you'll get your shot next year, barring injury, like, no matter what, because it maybe just felt bad for Morris. So, I mean, who knows? I guess kudos, though, to Coach Dykes that he's been able to find QB talent, or he inherited some of it. But, I mean, he's also brought in some guys that can ball as well, which is a good sign that you can at least see talent. So that's not a bad thing. But you're right. That is bizarre. 2 out of 2 misses in terms of a starting season quarterback compared to what looks like a decent backup.
Yeah. Up next, UCF at Oklahoma. Admittedly, as I was kind of looking through the slate and hearing you make your picks, I'm like, man, I wish. I don't think I'd like this one to go to the coin, but we made our
You
bed.
got to listen. You made your bet.
And here we
Oh,
go, Central
man.
Florida picking up the upset here for me. Yeah, you know what? I mean, can't we just got to do better than 25%. So we, even if we drop that one, it is what it is.
I
Oklahoma
mean,
State.
they are gonna can't. I mean, Oklahoma's at times this season played down to their competition. I mean, and they haven't been sharp during certain halves, so you never know. Like, it's not they've lost at home to big underdogs a good amount the last decade. So
Yeah. And I mean, you got to trust our guy Gustavo to get it done.
Gustavo, he's gonna save his job this weekend. You know what? I don't care if I'm even wrong. Gustavo's gonna make himself a legend.
Up next, we got who do we got? We got Oklahoma State at West Virginia. Oklahoma State going to the East Coast. That's not nothing. They're going to pick up the win here. They're going to pick up the win on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Go Pokes. Maybe they, I'll tell you what, the Oklahoma folks on my Twitter feed, they're feeling pretty good. They're feeling pretty good, and has not been the case this season for them.
No, it hasn't. But you know what? They have a right to feel good right now. There's hope. They might even compete well in Bedlam. You never know.
Yeah. Up next, Baylor at Cincinnati. This is one that I'm very. This might have been the matchup to determine. I just got to flip a coin here, so we'll see who we pledge our allegiance to. We got the home team, Cincinnati.
Ooh, man, beautiful. Got Cincinnati rocking and rolling.
Man, we got so far we got all of the same teams except I have UCF and you have Oklahoma. This feels like a bad beat. Especially coming into this contest, Texas at Houston. Again, this is one I'd rather not let the coin take, but we've made our bed. We got to sleep in it. And here we go. Here we go. And we got
you made that promise.
We got Houston at
yeah, I was gonna say I'm willing to give you like one free pass if you're like, I'm willing. If your gut says Texas, I'm willing to say I'll defend you. But if you got to trust the coin,
Well, because what's going to
I can
happen, Drew
respect it.
Russell, is that then Houston would beat Texas, and
That
I
would
would have had
happen.
that pick because I defiled the coin. Now, Texas is going to win, but I made my bet. I'm going to sleep in it. I stand by it. I mean, like I said, 2 for 8.
You're a real life Two-Face.
Yeah,
That should be your Halloween costume. You should show up as Two-Face next week and say, let's see what the coin says, whatever the coin decides. Except
absolutely.
thankfully, just football picks. We're not talking life and deaths. That's usually a good thing. So, but this is an
Absolutely.
interesting week. I crack up that the coin went like my picks that were, I feel 50-50. And then the ones you kind of naturally feel pretty good about. It's like, nah, we're going big upset.
Yeah. Not how I would have wanted the coin to do it, but if I felt good about picking Big 12 football games, I would have left the coin out of it.
It's true. No, for all I know, we're going to look at a 6-0 board next week, and I'm going to look for my own Google game to decide my picks because I'm going to say I got to get in on this action. That's what I'm saying.
Well, perfect. Drew Russell, anything else you'd like to add before we sign off for another exciting week of Big 12 action?
Boy, just a good week ahead. I think we talked about how it's starting to feel like fall last week. Weather should be really nice throughout a lot of these games this weekend, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what, there is a lot of excitement regarding just how this race plays out in the Big 12. I know the national narrative right now is, and I get it, rightfully so. Oklahoma and Texas are going to rematch in the Big 12 championship. And the winner of that is the one who's going to play in the college football playoff, or that's starting to be built a little bit. There's a lot of teams right now with one loss that could potentially make a run. Now, I don't disagree that on paper it's OU Texas going for a collision course again, but there is a lot of games to be played. There's a lot of ticked off teams. And I said a few weeks ago, but OU and Texas are going to continue to get, in general, teams' best shots. So we'll see if there is any stunning upsets. It might not be this week, even though the coin might know all. But I am kind of curious going forward if there is somebody who could knock off one of those two teams and really muddy up this race and potentially get an unexpected championship game in Dallas.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Oklahoma, Texas, when they kind of determined this new format where the two best teams are going to make the conference championship game. I feel like a lot of people were like, oh, it's just going to be Oklahoma and Texas every year. It's happened one time. So,
That's a great point.
We've been proven wrong many times before. Kansas State still controls your own destiny. Texas still has to go to Ames. We talked about that insane stat last week about how tough it is to play Ames if they can get a night game. I mean, that's a tough beat. So, lots of weirder stuff has happened, especially in this conference.
It has. No, and that's a November game. So that could be really, really interesting up in Ames. And there are still a lot of tough games ahead for both of those programs before you get that potential rematch. And I'm sure, like you talked about Brent Yormark earlier, he does not necessarily, like, it's a good ratings draw. There'll be a lot of interest, but he wants to promote, he's hoping he'd prefer two probably teams that are not OU Texas, but at least one. Does anybody step up? And I don't know if they do or not right now because OU and Texas are the two most talented teams in the conference as of right now. But there is still a lot of football to play. And as you and I both know, it is truly a week-by-week basis. And any given Saturday, anything can happen.
I mean, that